All right, well, we were talking about the restaurant and our wine program here, and I've done a lot of thinking. Back in the mid-90s, we renovated from a fire back in 1993, and business slowly started getting better and better each year. And about the mid-90s, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was thinking about how passionate I am about wine, and I thought if we're going to really develop a program where we get into having 100 plus wines on the wine list, I had a nice discussion with my brother, and I said we need to have a wine room, a good area to store our wine. And unfortunately, we didn't really have a place in the restaurant to do a wine room that would have been really cool, but I wanted a functional place to properly store it. So a friend of mine had given me a bunch of information, and I picked out a perfect little corner down in the basement in between a brick wall and a stone wall. And what I did was I figured out that you can stuff insulation up in the rafters, and then you can use the brick and the stone walls the way they are. We're going to go down there in a minute. And then I had a carpenter come in and put a foot thick of water-resistant insulation, stuffed it with insulation, and I just put 2 incandescent light bulbs, nothing fancy. And fortunately, my father-in-law is a retired carpenter, and he was very helpful with building the shelves and lining the wall so that I could have different compartments to store the wine. And the funny thing was, I bought this fancy wine cooler out of one of these catalogs. It was pretty pricey, pretty expensive, and that darn thing shot craps after about 3 years. And in the interim, we ended up just sticking an air conditioner to keep the wine cool. Okay, so basically, when I run the air conditioner in the summer, it keeps it at about 60 degrees in there. In the winter time, it may drop down to about 55 degrees, but it's fairly consistent temperature, and it's a nice area to store wine for the restaurant. The funny thing about getting in and developing the wine list and taking a wine program from back in the old days, where we had about 15 whites and 15 reds, period, or even less than that in the old days when we first started back in the late 70s, and we didn't have anything but jug wine for the most part. I had a customer come in one evening and was asking about a particular French wine that we had on the list. And they asked a question about the producer and some questions about the label and on the wine. And I felt silly because I didn't know the answer to their question. And that kind of got my furnace fired up, where I'm like, man, I want to know more about this French wine. And I was passionate about wine, but I became more passionate about learning more about wine and about the knowledge, so that if a customer comes in, by golly, I want to know as much as I can about any wine that I have on the wine list.